Joining us now on the World Wakanda Hotline to talk some more NFL. You can follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. He is the czar of the playbook, the one and only Emory Hunt. Emory, how you doing on this Thursday?
I'm doing fine, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
I appreciate you coming on. So, all right, I got to start off with my controversial question. I started coming up with this weekend, and I've been told this is sacrilegious. So you watch a lot of game tape, you review a lot of teams, you've seen a lot of film. I contend that Patrick Mahomes is not the league MVP. And I contend that because I believe there's at least 10 quarterbacks in the NFL that if you swapped him out off his team, they would have similar stats to him. Whereas if you take Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers off their teams, I'm not sure those are playoff teams. I think that there's at least 10 quarterbacks that if you put them in the Kansas City system with Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and all those weapons, they would still be very offensively dangerous. Your response?
Well, we saw what that looked like last year with Alex Smith, and their offense wasn't as nearly as potent or productive as it is now with Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's the biggest flaw in your position for that case. I would also contend that the Saints, to be honest, probably could operate just as effective with Teddy Bridgewater now. And I mean, you look at the Rams, I think that's the one where you take golf out of the Rams, maybe their passing game doesn't have the same level of potency as it does. But I think right now, when you look at Pat Mahomes and what he's done so far this season and how he's been able to get everyone involved, and now it's going to really depend on him without Kareem Hunt in that running game. So we'll see moving forward. But I do think he has to be, to me, it would be either him or Todd Gurley would be the choice for MVP, or even Aaron Donald.
See, I'm looking at Phillip Rivers and Khalil Mack because to me, I look at Donald, he basically has been shut down for a couple of weeks here. Whereas Gurley, when he's not out there, I can see that argument because he definitely is valuable. Without him getting the run the ball, the Rams offense isn't the same. I don't think we're giving Phillip Rivers enough love. I mean, this guy has a team that's had multiple injuries this year. He's carrying them. It's a new regime. They're in a stadium where they don't even have a home field. They're basically on the road every week. I don't know. Are we just not giving Phillip Rivers enough love, or am I just giving him too much love?
No, I actually think you bring up a great point with both Rivers and Mack. I think those are two viable options. Rivers, what he's done this year in response to, like you said, losing Gordon for a couple of games, losing some offensive linemen, going without some receivers every now and then. And I think the fact that he's still been able to play winning football and on the back end has been huge. And that's where the Chargers usually struggle in situational football. They'll get out to a lead and lose that lead and ultimately lose the game. But now they're fighting back. They're being resilient. He's coming down the field and putting the team in winning situations in which they're now starting to convert. So, yeah, he would be a guy that definitely would be up there, in my opinion, as far as like a finalist for that award.
Emory Hunt joining us. Emory, I wanted to get your take on where the league is going right now in terms of the parity. Obviously, we saw the Chargers go on the road last week in Kansas City, get the win. They're tied for the best record in the AFC. We saw the Saints struggle on Monday night, but they still managed to get a win. The Rams obviously lost to the Eagles. The Bears are kind of in that mix now. In your mind, I mean, is there really a clear-cut favorite in the NFL, or do we kind of just have to wait until we see the playoff seedings come out and then we can make that determination?
That's a great point. Well, I think we have to wait until the seasons come out because right now the NFL and football in general has always been this. It's all about matchups. Certain teams match up well against others, and we saw that last week with the Chiefs and Chargers. We saw that a week prior to that with the Chargers and the Ravens. So it all depends on which matchup you get. The Saints don't match up well with the Cowboys. The Cowboys probably don't match up well with Seattle, and Seattle probably matches up perfectly with Chicago. So it's really all about matchups. I think this is going to be the most I don't know, it's not going to make sense, but the most fun we're going to have watching the playoffs because we really don't have a clear-cut favorite because everyone can beat legitimately anyone. It all depends on who you get matched up against.
I wanted to switch gears for a moment. Josh Gordon is stepping away from football once again. We've seen his timeline and all the issues he's had with his mental health and his addictions. What was your reaction to this, knowing that it seemed like he was finally back on the right path? He stepped away in training camp with the Cleveland Browns to get things right. He took some additional time. They eventually traded him, but it seemed like he was in a perfect spot with New England, where he was worked in slowly. He was working with Tom Brady. He's obviously being coached by Bill Belichick. It seemed like Josh Gordon was in the right situation for him to get better, to stay out of trouble, to keep his health up. What was your reaction knowing today that he has stepped away from football again, and that he could be facing a suspension, and this season basically could be the last time we ever see Josh Gordon play football?
I felt bad, man, and it goes to show you that I wish folks will remember this empathy and sympathy that they have right now for Gordon. I want them to remember that when it's the combine, when guys get caught with weed or what have you, or when other players have transgressions that deal with addiction or deal with mental health, because these are human beings. I think a lot of times people tend to view football players or athletes in general as robots, as names on jerseys and in fantasy football lists and video game type entities. But these are legitimate human beings that go through the same things that the regular person goes through. They just happen to do their work on television in front of millions of people. So I felt bad for him, because we all have someone that we either know closely, whether it be family or friend, or acquaintance that have dealt with addiction, mental health issues, and it's a serious problem in this country that a lot of times people are afraid to talk about and address. And when you have someone like Josh Gordon, who you can legitimately see that's battling and fighting this and trying to do the best thing so he can continue to play the game that he loves, it's tough. It's easy for one of us to say, oh, he should just stop doing this. Well, that's not how addiction works, and that's not how mental health works. It's easy to say that if you're not in it. So I hope people take this as a lesson and remember this level of sympathy and empathy we have for Gordon, for other people in this world that are going through the same thing. When you see them, whether you're seeing somebody out on a road holding up a sign, a homeless person, or if you see one of your favorite football players going through this type of deal, remember that same empathy and sympathy when you see the next man.
Emory Hunt joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. Emory writes for The Athletic. Also check out his website, footballgameplan.com, and also his Twitter channel, where he has a lot of college and NFL football coverage there. Emory, in our backyard, let's flip over to the Eagles for a moment. It's very interesting because this team, they're 7-7. And their 7 wins, they've rushed the ball at least 27 times or more. In their 7 losses, they've rushed the ball less than 27 times. It seems like a very simple stat. And some people are saying, well, is it the chicken or the egg? Are they winning because of the running game, or are they winning and then they run the ball? So in your perspective, how do you look at a team who that kind of record is so extreme on one end to the other when it comes to their offense?
I think it's a little bit of both. Sometimes you run the ball when you're up to drain the clock, and other times you can run the ball to really start the game and have success, and you just keep on running it. I think people nowadays, because of all the analytics and the fantasy football boom and all the the stat gurus that we see now on Twitter and social media, everyone wants to devalue the running game, but football guys know that the running game will always be prevalent because it's a way to control the game. And there's no difference between a big run that you break for a long touchdown and a deep pass. They both have the same probability to have success. It just takes one play to make it happen. So essentially, you can run your way back into a ball game. We've seen that before. We've seen it in college with option teams. We've seen it now in the NFL with teams that get back to basics, run the ball, and find themselves back into a ball game in which they were down 2 touchdowns and ultimately win that game. So people just have to look at the running game for what it is. It's a piece of the offense, and if you can do it well, just continue to do it. And if you are having issues with it, then you try to find other ways to supplement that. The Eagles used to do a great job of that with the short passes, whether it be slants or your speed outs or your little pop passes. That's one way to loosen up the quote-unquote box to where that way you could then start to run the football. And you don't have to run it 25 to 30 times to have success. It's about when you run it and how you run it in order for the running game to have success.
Emory, I wanted to ask you about the Eagles quarterback situation. Obviously, Wentz, we know, is the franchise quarterback. There really is no debate. But for the Eagle fans and other people who are out there saying that the offense kind of runs a little bit smoother or more effectively with Nick Foles back there, what exactly are you seeing on film? At least based on what I've seen, every time Foles is in there, the offense is simplified. But if you simplified it like that for Carson Wentz, they would be just as successful, if not more successful, due to his talent at that position. And what are you seeing in the differences between Wentz and Foles back there for the Eagles?
I think the reason why fans have that perception is because, if we're being completely honest here, Foles has better pocket presence than Carson Wentz. So Foles is going to do a better job managing the pocket and getting rid of the football, where Wentz is going to drop back at the top of his drop, staying flat-footed, and that's leaving him up, susceptible to guys coming in, getting hits on him, slapping the ball out of his hand. And I think that's been the biggest issue with Foles. Despite being a lesser athlete, has better pocket mobility than Wentz does. Wentz is the better athlete, so you're able to do more things outside of the framework of the play, which is where he has a ton of success. And a lot of his success comes from those broken plays where he's able to get outside and create on the run. Plus, Foles is a better deep ball passer than Carson Wentz. But in the intermediate area, Wentz does a great job of driving the football, especially over the middle of the field. And I think there's give and take where, okay, well, Foles can do this in the pocket and also can hit the deep ball. Well, Wentz can really be athletic and supersede some perceived offensive line issues and get outside and pick up cheap yards. And he's going to break a couple tackles as well. He drives the football really well over the middle of the field. Well, Foles can play a different game. So I think because of the way he plays, it makes it look like the offense is flowing a little bit better because he's getting the ball out quicker and being able to manage the pocket a little bit better than Wentz.
So then what is your response then to people who say, well, Carson Wentz is injury prone. Why don't we just trade away Wentz and keep Foles because Foles isn't even 30? There's a contingent of fans who think that why don't you just keep Foles and unload Wentz?
Well, here's the thing. Well, the injury prone thing, I think it's a fact because every year since his senior year at North Dakota State, he's had some injury. Right? And so that is a concern. However, when you look at, let's say, from a potential standpoint, you kind of know what Foles' ceiling is. It's almost like if you were satisfied with Matt Schaub juxtaposed to a guy that, let's say, that had some injury concerns. Let's say I don't want to compare the two, but let's say like a Carson Wentz. Would you rather keep Matt Schaub because you know he's going to be healthy for 16 games? Or would you gamble on the potential of a guy that can do a little bit more athletically? The hope is that you don't have a guy like Carson Wentz change his game because that's what made you draft him that high. You like the athleticism. You like his ability to create. You like his ability to play through pain and be a tough player. But if a guy is constantly showing you that he has been, an injury, whether it be major or small, like the injury in college, it was a risk, and it had him miss 8 games. In his rookie year, he got hurt in the preseason, broken ribs, but he was able to come back and not miss any snaps the rest of that season. So that's not a concern. But then last year, you had the ACL. I just think that this year was him coming back too soon. And because he came back too soon, he's trying to overcompensate for the knee, and that's how he ends up hurting his back. So I think next year, given a full season, given a full offseason, and him just being healthy without pressure of rushing back and trying to prove. Because I think his issue was a little bit of what we saw with RG3. He rushed back too fast because he started to hear the words behind, oh, Kirk Cousins has played better. And Wentz is hearing the same thing, like, oh, Nick Foles is playing better. So in order to not get Wally pipped, you see a guy that tried to come back too soon to prove that, hey, I am healthy, I'm not hurt anymore, but he ends up getting hurt again. Same thing with RG3.
Follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan, writes for The Athletic, has a lot of content on his YouTube channel. He is Emory Hunt. Emory, appreciate you joining us today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, and keep up the great work, also mentoring the youth of tomorrow, man.
Man, I appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me on.